The BT-42 tank is an armored weapon used by Finland during World War II. It was a modification of the Soviet BT fast tank chassis captured by Finland. Although its performance was slightly improved, it quickly became outdated during the war. Besides its appearance resembling a scaled-down version of the KV-2, which could intimidate the enemy, its actual combat capability was mediocre, completely different from its portrayal in movies and TV shows. In the Winter War of 1939, Finland obtained two types of weapons: the captured Soviet BT fast tanks and the 24 QF 4.5-inch, 114mm caliber, howitzers gifted by the British Army. For Finland, the lack of indigenous armored weapon development capabilities led to its main armored forces being equipped with captured Soviet tanks such as the T-26 and the BT series, in addition to a small number of purchased Vickers light tanks. These equipment had insufficient firepower and defensive capabilities, making them unsuitable for extensive use. In order to meet the armored needs of the frontline troops during the Barbarossa operation, Finland began to modify its existing tanks. Finland chose the chassis of the BT-7 tank, combined it with the QF 4.5-inch howitzer, and redesigned the turret structure to create the BT-42 tank. To accommodate the larger-sized gun, the new turret was enlarged, and the elevation of the gun was retained from the original design, while the turret rotation structure was retained from the BT-7. The sighting equipment for the gun was dismantled from the captured Soviet 76.2mm field gun. When viewed from the front, the large turret of the BT-42 bears some resemblance to the heavy KV-2 tank. The entire tank weighed 15 tons and had a crew of 3, including the driver/communications officer, loader/gunner, and driver. It had a maximum speed of 53 km per hour and a maximum range of 375 km. The modified BT-42, as compared to the original BT-7, did not have any changes in armor protection and mobility. It simply replaced the original 45mm tank gun with a howitzer, enhancing its support capability for infantry but weakening its anti-tank capability. Therefore, it would be more appropriate to call it an assault gun. It did not have any technological highlights, and the quantity was very limited, with only a meager 18 units. As for the main weapon of the BT-42, the QF 4.5-inch howitzer was developed by the British before World War I. It weighed nearly 1.5 tons and used separate loading ammunition, with a muzzle velocity of 306 meters per second and a maximum range of about 6 kilometers. Although it was also used by the British during World War II, its performance was already outdated. In order to enhance the anti-armor capability of the gun, Finland developed armor-piercing ammunition using shaped charges. However, in actual combat, there were 18 instances where the shells failed to destroy T-34 tanks, which was quite unbelievable. Apart from the ineffectiveness of the gun, the armor protection of the BT-42 was also very poor. The armor inherited from the BT-7 only had a thickness of just over 20mm on the front. As for the huge turret, in order to avoid excessively increasing the weight and changing the tank's center of gravity, the turret armor was very thin, with only about 10mm. The original plan was to cover the recoil mechanism in front of the turret with 4mm thick steel armor, but the factory decided to increase it to 5 to 10mm, considering it to be too thin. Nevertheless, the overall defensive capability of the BT-42 was still very limited, only able to withstand small arms fire. Even the Soviet anti-tank rifles posed a threat to it, not to mention professional anti-tank guns or tanks. Inside the tank, although the turret structure was enlarged to accommodate the gun and separate loading ammunition, the internal space was already very small. With the gun elevation mechanism and turret rotation mechanism operating independently, the gunner could only operate them one at a time, keeping the gunner and the loader very busy, indirectly weakening its combat capability. In conclusion, the modified BT-42 tank of Finland, like the tanks modified by other satellite countries at the time, was a difficult attempt to maintain the combat capability of the army during a large-scale war, and was a move made out of necessity. In the later stages of World War II, the Finnish army, with the limited number of BT-42 tanks and other armored weapons, was unable to resist the Soviet counteroffensive. In order to maintain the combat effectiveness of its allies and buy time for itself, the German army provided the Finnish army with Sturmgeschütz III assault guns, replacing the BT-42. Only one BT-42 was preserved after the war.